Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to my Wednesday live Instagram broadcast for Tablas Creek. I am, of course, Jason Haas. So, as I always do, I will be giving you a little tour of what's going on in the vineyard and winery. We have a lot of news to share. And then I'll be inviting a guest. And my guest this week is the brilliant Lisa Mattson, who oversees the marketing at Jordan Winery. And I think she is as sharp as it gets in the winery marketing world. And I always look to her as an example of how to do things right and how to come at things from a new angle. So very much looking forward to our conversation. But before I invite her, I will, as always, take you on a little tour. So we are, as I'm sure you have seen from any wineries that you're following, we're in the middle of veraison. That means that the grapes are changing color and gaining sweetness. This is Grenache that I took this morning. There are others that are more advanced, Syrah's more advanced, Pinot's more advanced. We're still at least a couple of weeks away from harvest, probably a little more than that here. But it's beautiful. And if wineries cannot stop posting pictures of these grapes changing color, I hope that you will forgive them and us. It only happens once a year. The vineyards are in great shape. This is a picture of the Scruffy Hill dry farmed block that we have. We have been very lucky up until this point that we have not had any extended heat waves. So the vines are not under a huge amount of stress. They look spectacular. Of course, that is likely to change this weekend. I'll talk about that in a moment, but for now, so far, so good. In the cellar, we are about to be out with the 2019 vintage. This is our harvest chalkboard, and in with the 2020. We are doing the annual work of going and cleaning all of the equipment, testing it, make sure it's all working. We are starting to test the grapes. We've brought in our first samples of the 2020s. This is Austin Collins testing Viognier, and found some Viognier as high as 19 bricks. I mean, that's. I don't think a whole sample would be that, but that means we're not that far away. So again, maybe as soon as a couple of weeks for the first of the whites. This is, again, checking the bricks. We're also getting ready with our new barrels. This is something close to our annual barrel purchase here. So if you're laughing that it looks like 4 barrels, well, that's about right. We don't buy a lot of new wood, but this is the time of year when they do show up. And then we're also getting ready, starting tomorrow, for our last bottling before harvest. We're getting a few small lot things in, and then the big thing that we're getting in is the 2019 Patelin Blanc, which is great. It's the whole cellar smells like peaches and apples, and that's the Patelin Blanc. Our big news is that we received our regenerative organic certification this week. If you have not checked out Jordi Lonborg's blog celebrating this, we're the first vineyard and winery in the world to get this regenerative organic certification. It includes pillars in soil health. It includes pillars in biodiversity, pillars in animal welfare, farm worker welfare. We think it's going to be the gold standard in sustainable agriculture, and the announcement just came this week, so it's a super big deal. If you have not yet read Jordi's blog, it's linked off the homepage of our website. Okay, done with pictures. I mentioned that we are expecting a heat wave this weekend. We just made the call this morning that we're going to be closing in the afternoons, because of course we have to be outside tasting because of COVID. We're going to be closing in the afternoons, not taking any appointments afternoon. Starting Friday all the way through Monday, we are contacting everyone who has a reservation. We did this a couple of weekends ago. Again, we're really sorry. We hate doing this, but at the same time, we don't feel like it's safe or going to be pleasant for people to be outside in temperatures that are forecast to be as high as 110. There's also supposed to be some humidity. There's the remnants of a tropical storm. It just sounds unpleasant. So we're going to be as safe as we can, cut things off at noon. We apologize in advance. We appreciate your cooperation. We're all working in a world where not everything is as we would have it ideally. So that's it for my update. I am going to invite Lisa to join me. And again, I have we thank you for sending in questions. If you sent in questions for us to ask, thank you. I'll get to those. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, how are you, Jason? Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. Is it warm and beautiful up in your world also?
It is, but we have actually had a lot of fog recently. So that's typical of August in Sonoma County, where you get up in the morning and it's just socked in with fog when you're in the hills, and that doesn't burn off until sometimes noon. So you can see if I lean forward, the sun is finally out, but that only happened about an hour ago, and that's been the way it has been for at least the last couple of weeks. And I'm always says, since we do a lot of our own photo and video here at the winery, I've been watching the morning fog because you want to get those sunrise shots of when the guys are planting new vines here right now. And it's been really difficult to do that. I'm wondering if this heat wave it should be beneficial, at least from the perspective of a photographer, but like you said, not so much from the guest's perspective, because we shouldn't have that deep marine layer and thick marine layer when we've got days that are going to be 100 degrees up here possibly.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that people often don't, if they don't live in California, they often don't understand about the California climate. It's not, north does not mean cooler, south does not mean warmer necessarily. It's a question of whether or not you're open to the ocean, whether or not where you are with regards to fog patterns. It's not a reliable thing based on latitude.
Absolutely. And that temperature change can be anywhere from, 35 to 40 to 50 degrees per day. You could be we could be at 50 at night and we'll be up to 100 this weekend. And so that's always just very dramatic. Even we host hikes here at the winery. It's something we've expanded during COVID. And they start out at 9 o'clock. And some people are asking, well, why would you go hiking at 9? And it's a 4-mile hike, and it's about 3 hours, and literally by 11 or 10 it's like you're freezing at the beginning, but within an hour you're like taking off the layers. Yeah. And by the time you get to the top of the hill, it's quite warm.
I often joke that it's great for the grapevines. It's a little hard on our wardrobes.
Absolutely. I hadn't heard that, but yeah, totally agree.
Cool. Okay, so just to let people get to know you a little bit, so you grew up in Kansas, which I grew up in Vermont. Neither of these are normal places to start for somebody who goes into wine. Was wine a part of? Was it on your dinner table growing up? Was it something that you ever thought that you would be a part of?
No, absolutely not. I grew up in a town of about 3,000 people, and Coors Light was on the dinner table in a can. That's what my dad drank, and if on a special occasion it was Busch. So never really saw wine. My first wine was Boone's Farm in the back of a station wagon. I was underage, but fortunately for me, I ended up moving to Florida in after my sophomore year of college, and was waiting tables and bartending. And I was very fortuitous that I ended up at Florida International University to finish my college education, and they have a really wonderful hospitality program, and wine classes are a part of that. So I took a wine class, fell in love with it when I was 21 years old. Actually, I think I just turned 22, but anyway, the rest is history, and that's how I got into wine.
So I always feel like working as a restaurant server should be a rite of passage that everybody has to do before they can be officially an adult. Are there things that you learned from doing that you still use?
I think so. I think that once you've waited tables, and if you're into it, if you love hospitality, I think that's kind of where it's born. And once you're always trying to take care of other people, if that's a job that you loved. And so I find that it comes very natural, even though I'm in marketing. Sometimes I'll host guests on the terrace with our new Paris on the Terrace luncheon, and I'm bussing, and it just comes naturally, and wanting to pour and talk about the wine. And so I think that there's that. I think multitasking, there's just something about how your brain gets wired as a server or a bartender that carries over into any part of your career. Just being able to think through like all these things that you have to do at once, what's coming next, okay, the next course, this, that, what am I planning out, desserts. And I think that there's a possibility that the way my brain has been trained to handle all these diverse set of things that I do at Jordan, that was probably a lot of that was born in the restaurants as well. And I think you develop an incredible memory. If you already had a good memory, I think that's strengthened in the restaurant world because of how much you have to juggle. Some people write things down, but a lot of people don't. And I think that's helped me as well, because people always say, man, you have an amazing memory. And I did as a kid, but I think that it's just been strengthened through the 7 years that I spent in the restaurant world.
I always feel like one of the things that like you have to do to be a good server is you have to be able to think on your feet. You can't get flustered in the middle of when things don't go exactly as you expected. I feel like that's one of the things that I lean on, that I got from my 4 summers doing that in college. And I feel like I can see that in people even as they go later in their careers.
Yeah, definitely. It makes you very resourceful, I think.
Because you are sometimes out there on an island. Cool. So talk a little bit about the diversity of the things that you do for Jordan. I mean, I know you obviously you're overseeing things, but you do a lot of the things yourself. I mean, you do a lot of the writing, a lot of the photography. Talk about what it is that you do. What's a normal day or a normal week like?
Yeah. So my job here at Jordan, I've been here 10 years. It's sort of a culmination of all the different jobs that I had blended together, because Jordan only makes 2 wines, a Chardonnay and a Cabernet Sauvignon, both in the French tradition. That frees me up in terms of ATVs going by. Sorry if you can hear that. I'll stop for a moment.
I have one behind me too. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so that frees me up a little bit in terms of a typical marketing person or public relations person at a bigger company, or even a winery that might be smaller than Jordan. You might have 30 different wines to release that year, and you have to send them to journalists and write the tasting notes and get it on the website. And so we're fortunate that since we have the 2, there's a time that we release those wines in the spring, and that's it. So it does free me up to focus on a lot of other things in PR and marketing. So I worked in wine journalism, and then I worked in wine public relations. So I oversee, the talking to the journalists. I'm the person that takes the calls primarily. I do have a marketing and communications manager now that supports, and I'm training her to be able to do some of those things. I'm the main spokesperson for the winery, and it's not something related to what our winemaker would talk about or John Jordan would talk about. So I field all of those requests. I host media guests here. The website falls under my department. Email marketing and email newsletters we send out, that falls under my department. Even the strategy, working with hospitality on new experiences and those ideas. And if we're doing a special event, what's that going to look like? Work closely with the hospitality director on that. Photo, video, blog, search engine optimization, which is really important, and writing for SEO. It's not enough to just put up a blog. You have to remember, what's my keyword going to be that I'm working for, and your headlines, and how many times do you get that keyword into the story in the right place. And so there's a lot of that involved. We have 2 blogs. We started out with 1. So Jason was certainly someone that I always looked to and admired with his winery blog when we started ours. And so we have the Jordan Winery blog. And because Jordan is a very diverse business where we have full-time chefs, we do events, we have a lot of viticultural experiments are happening on the ranch because it's 1,200 acres. We have wild animals here. We have domesticated animals here. There's a lot going on. So we work with a lot of growers. So we do our own floral design. So all of this content was being put out on the Jordan blog. But what we found is it's too overwhelming for the consumer. And we have different consumers. We have someone that wants to know about wine stuff and wine geek stuff. And then another consumer that really wants to know about florals and hospitality and the food and the travel things. So we've now broken that into 2 blogs. We also have Wine Country Table, which is extremely editorial and has been amazing in driving traffic to jordanwinery.com and awareness. But we're also writing about other wineries in that blog, other businesses in that blog, to kind of support the wine country lifestyle for people traveling here, as well as people that want to take that at home. And then we shoot most of our own video and photography here as well. I was a photo editor at a magazine at one point, so I developed an eye for that. And then I'm married to someone who was a former photographer, so he helped, kind of train my eye more. And then Kendall, who works for me as my marketing communications manager, who's also works on social media as well for us and helps me with writing on the blogs and all of that.
Yeah.
She is a very talented photographer. And so she does a lot of our photography as well. So we just kind of share it. I would say that I used to do more at the beginning than I do now. Sorry, the light's changing a little bit, so I might move my camera because I'm probably starting to do a little bit of a shadow thing is happening. But yeah, so Kendall also works with me a lot on the photography here, and we try to do as much of that as we can, and the social as well. So our marketing department wears a lot of hats, and I think one of the reasons why we can do that is because we only make the 2 wines.
So, I mean, Jordan's an iconic winery. It's been around since 1972, I think.
72 is when we were founded, and then the first vintage of Cabernet came out in 1976.
So that I'm sure adds opportunities, but I'm sure it also adds challenges to coming in from the outside and kind of putting your own voice as a piece of that marketing. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached that?
Yes. So, one of the challenges that John Jordan really wanted to overcome when he hired me was the fact that, we had this brand that was established and had been around for decades, and that wine marketing had always been, extremely traditional. We lived in a world where the ideas for wine marketing were send your wines in to magazines for scores, or have a wine dinner and invite people to come to that dinner. And that was pretty much the 2 main ways that you marketed wine. And Jordan, because we've been making the same 2 wines for since the 70s, we don't have that, news hook or things with the journalist. And we also make a style of wine, very balanced, elegant, more feminine, that doesn't always do that well in a blind tasting with California wines that have tended over the years to be, more emphasis on alcohol and power. And so we just really don't even send our wines out for scores. So for us, John knew that if you have a brand that first and foremost is very traditional and very conservative, and you have a situation where you're not able to, or you're not interested in rather marketing in the way that is traditional of the wine business, how do you do something differently? So his idea, what he said to me when we were doing the interview is he said, Jordan, this was in 2009, he said, Jordan is at a risk of becoming, a dinosaur or stale and stolid, and I don't want that. And so he's like, well, my goal is to find somebody who's going to help me sort of transition Jordan successfully through the generations, because we are a brand that was built with the baby boomers, and we want Gen X and millennials and the next to love Jordan as much as their parents and grandparents did. And so one of the ideas was we have this belief at Jordan that I wanted to bring the people to life behind the wines, and that you can straddle this idea of being, a traditional house, a beautiful place that does elegant hospitality, but you can also show the personality of the people and show that we still like to have a lot of fun. And that does not compromise the quality and the emphasis of, quality without compromise that we put onto the wines. But also that doesn't change the guest experience when somebody comes here, a very French inspired, lunch or tasting. But their host is going to be gracious and happy, and they're going to have fun, and it's not going to feel stuffy, because we feel like you can have a building like this that's very grand in French Chateau and not bring the pretentiousness with it. And that's really what John wanted to do, is make sure, no velvet rope mentality here, like may have been when his dad was in charge. And that was more typical of wine as tourism was developing out here in the 90s. But So that was kind of it. And so that's why we moved into, doing a music video once a year, and, having something funny every now and then, and doing an April Fool's Day joke. So it's not something that we do all the time, but it still, shows them that we like to have fun.
Yeah, and I love the way that it's possible, when done right, to use a blog, to use social media to help personalize a brand, so that you do. It's not a label. It's not something which is static. It's a collection of people who are working together to do something. And I mean, all businesses are like that, but you wouldn't know it from a lot of the wine marketing that you see. And I'm totally in agreement that that's such a valuable thing to do, and that you can do it in a way that does not compromise the seriousness of your brand. You can be a serious brand and still still be full of appealing people who they connect, who customers connect with.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
idea.
so you write for a lot of different um, sorts of formats. I mean, everything from social media to the blog to tech sheets to the
Email.
book that you wrote to email marketing to. Now I want to talk about your book in a second, but how do you find yourself having to change the voice that you write with for these different media? And I'm saying this partly because I felt like it took me years to learn to write in a voice that was appropriate for a blog, because I had been used to writing kind of technical writing, third person, removing the personality from it, and it took me a while to find my voice, find my footing in writing a blog. And you're writing across so many different uses and different audiences, and you seem to do it so fluidly. I'm just wondering if if it was actually as easy as you make it look, or was that something that you had to work on?
Actually, I think that it's easier for me because I'm not a winemaker or general manager like you that's so involved. I mean, hands on, like literally fingers involved in that aspect of the business. So I think that you probably think technically, in terms of when you're trying to talk about wine and making that a little more accessible to people. So I think that for you to separate like the blog from when I'm talking about a blog that has winemaking related, or I'm talking about a blog that might be visit related, or I'm writing an email that might be a little, and you're writing an email about a wine, it might be harder for you. So I think that it's easier for me because I guess I wouldn't say it's easy, but what I do to try to make it be effective is that I always think of, who is the author first. And so for us, when we send out a newsletter, the author is actually a person. It's Maribel, and it comes from her. And so we write a touch more like, like a person, like it's a person talking.
Yep.
In our newsletter. So that makes that easy. That voice will change if we change the format of our emails, which we're considering. For the blog, when I'm writing for Jordan, I do think of like, oh, a lot of times I'm doing it for another author. And sometimes we even have a ghostwriter help us the last couple of years when I need support. And so it's like when I write for Todd Knoll, he's the chef, or the ghostwriter helps me with food stuff. We write a little bit differently, and we make sure he's okay with it. When I write for Wine Country Table as myself, I know that is a blog that's focused on travel, and that's one of the things that I write. And so I write more in that roundup style that's more common with travel, and like I personalize. So that's very easy to me. I think text sheets, because I think, that's like a marketing piece that is not a blog or an email, which is more I look at them as more narrative. Tasting notes are not. And so they're just the typical format. And for some reason, for me, I'm able to separate those things out. And then when it comes to social media, I just try to be, a little pithy if you can. Try to be fun every now and then. Sometimes be news oriented, sometimes be narrative oriented, just and see what people are interested in.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I landed. It just took me a while to get there, but it's one of the things that I always admire about your work when I see it. It always feels like the voice is appropriate for the format that I see it in.
Well, thank you. And even nowadays, all of us that are writers or creative minds, you have to think about, the medium. And for an email, and it's also now with emails, what word do I need to put in the subject line to get somebody's attention enough that they want to stop the scroll? What word do I want to put into the Facebook text that's enough, because there's only going to be this many words before they get the ... that's
Right.
going to get them to stop? And what role does a video or photo play in that? It's very complicated. A lot of people think it's like, oh, whoever might make this look natural, but it's very complicated, and it's got more complicated in the last couple of years because of, the changes in organic reach with social media, and especially Facebook and Instagram, and how much money you have to consider paying to really get a message out to your audience that's following you. So that all takes more time to think about. Oh, there you're back.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry, I don't
You
know
were-
whether that
Oh, yeah.
was on our end.
I don't know. I got the
Probably
spit. I
was on
just
our
saw
end,
you
given that we're out
spitting
in the
and you
middle of the
stopped.
sticks.
But yeah, no, I'm good.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your experience in writing your book, because there are not a lot of published authors in the world of wine, and yours is sort of a memoir. Did you? How long did you know you wanted to do that before you actually started? And then once you decided you wanted to do it, how long did it take, and what was the process like?
Well, I remember in sixth grade, they did a career day where they had you do a presentation on what you wanted to be when you grew up. And I said I wanted to be a novelist. So I was always interested in writing. I was into poetry when I was younger, and then some like short story creative writing. And then, life became what life is, and you're working and going to college. And then I got more into journalism writing. And I dated a lot of interesting characters in my 20s in Florida. It's an amazing place to be single and go to college. But with time, once I got into wine and out here, every now and then I would tell a story because I like to tell stories. That's why I'm in the business of wine marketing as well. It's a lot of it's about storytelling, and a lot of my girlfriends would say, "Man, you need to write a book someday about your exes." So it was always an idea in the back of my mind, especially because I've been happily married for it'll be 15 years next month. And so my husband's very amazing and supportive, and not jealous or anything. Had no issue with me writing this book. So I think it was something as I was getting turned 30. After I turned 30, and I'd already been in the wine business, 8 years or so, and it was kind of like, wow. I found my dream guy, and then as time went on, I think it was about 35, starting to have these reflections on my wine career and my life and how lucky I am to have the life that I have. And so I really wanted to write that book, but I was working full time. And when the recession happened, it was the recession was starting, but the market had not collapsed yet. So it was like 2007. I decided to take a year off from Wilson Daniels, where I was head of communications there before here. And I went to Ireland with my husband for his job. So I wrote the first draft of the book then, and I just worked part-time for Wilson Daniels, which has a lot of European wines in their portfolio. So it was very convenient. I worked on some projects part-time for them from my home office in Europe. And that's where I wrote the first draft. It wasn't very good. I should have approached it very differently than I did. And so it took another several years from 2008 on to finish it. And I think that after the fires of 2015 is where I really got this, I don't know, I just had taken some time away from it and decided to work on it again, and I made it even better. So I'd kind of released something that I wasn't as proud of and, did okay, but not great. And then I really fine-tuned it kind of based on feedback of Amazon reviews and what people were saying at the beginning. And so I feel like it was like 2016 probably when I really got it done, even though I had, first draft was 2008. So it was a very long process because, I also came back to work full time in 2008 here. But I'm proud of it now. It's funny. It's just a collection of, it's kind of the story of my life from when I, was a beer drinker from Kansas to dropping out of college, moving to Florida, and the people that I met and kind of how I refined my palate over time into wine and into fine wine, and kind of like also refined my taste in men at the same time. So it's called The X's in My Glass.
Awesome. Cool. One more.
And one thing I would say about the book is that I have, since the 2017 fires here, I started donating proceeds from the book to help Sonoma Family Meal, which is still feeding victims of crisis, whether it's a fire or a flood or COVID. That's what they do. And Heather Irwin, who runs this organization and founded it, is amazing. So I just had another book order the other day from a tasting room here in town, Breathless Wines. And so I've got to go, now that the money's in the bank, got to go put my donation into Sonoma Family Meal. So it's an honor to be able to do that when people buy my book, is to, have it be doing good in the community here in Sonoma County wine country. Because without me ending up here, I would have never had, the life that I have. So.
Yeah, I think I think that community spirit comes through in your work also. I mean, I love that you do that Wine Country Table blog, that it's not, I mean, yes, there are benefits to Jordan, but it's not, it doesn't feel like it's about you. It's really about the community, and it's not an easy thing to do. We tried to do that for a while on the Tablas Creek blog, and it was a real struggle. I mean, we try to involve our community whenever we can, but to have built an entire project around kind of celebrating that community and celebrating the experience of visiting that community it's just an incredible thing to have done. So
Thank you. Yeah,
kudos.
I mean, value add is sort of, I mean, it's what drives content marketing, as they say. You have to have some sort of value that you're bringing to the reader. And for us, it's if, you know, there's a lot of people that come to Jordan as a destination when they want to come to wine country. And so if we can give them that, you know, we're like, hey, you're coming to us. Let us show you all the other great things that you can do when you're in the area. You know, that's kind of one of the things behind Wine Country Table. Or, you know, hey, you want to make pizza dough this weekend and open a bottle of Jordan Cab. Like, here's how to make our dough recipe. And, you know, it's foolproof. We've been serving it for X many years whenever we do something with pizza here at the winery. So it's just that little thing that can help people, that still ties to who we are.
Yep, that's great. Okay, one more real question. And that is, obviously, we've all been pivoting in different ways over the last 4 months as some of the experiences that we're used to offering people have become impossible, or we've had to change how they're done. What are your thoughts as to which of those sorts of changes are likely to be durable, and which ones are likely, as soon as there's a vaccine, as soon as people go back to sort of more normal life, we'll go back to doing things the old way? But I don't think everything's going to go back the old way. So I'm interested to know what you think is gonna last.
I do agree. I don't think that everything's going to go back to the same way. I think it's going to be some time as well, not even, you know, vaccine or not, where people are comfortable doing what they did before. So I think that there's two things that are here to stay. I think one is reservations. I think that even tasting rooms that were open with walk-ins before, I think that I don't know, you and I think had that conversation when I was down in July visiting you. I've been on some Zooms, you know, think tanks with other people in the industry, and with a winery owner in Washington and one in Oregon. And they both said, like, we never thought, like, we were like, you know, digging our heels and like, oh God, we have to start taking reservations. But they knew, you know, they had to do it to reopen. And they're like, this is the best thing that could have happened to us. We know more about the people that are coming. We're still full. I think there'll be a hybrid, you know, that could happen in the future. But we don't have a tasting room here at Jordan. I know you do. So you could, you know, I'd love to know what you think. But I think there'll be more of a hybrid of, like, I'm still going to take reservations in some way, and then let's see what happens. So we still have this capacity to do a little bit of walk-in, but you know, I think that's one thing that is going to stick around. The next thing I would say is outdoor seating. I think that, of course, a place like Jordan, we have 1,200 acres around us. We're very lucky. We were able to move things aside quickly. We already had 2 different outdoor experiences before COVID. So we just kind of pivoted, changed the seating with that, then created a new experience on the terrace. And I think that guests, the reason why they come to wine country, especially people from, you know, back east or the Midwest, where it's very humid in the summer, like, they're out here, honestly, to enjoy what we all that live here in California get to have every day. At least in the spring, summer, and fall. And so I think that you're going to see people, when it comes time to book those trips, if there's a winery that is a tasting room with no seating at all outside versus a winery that's offering something where they get to be outdoors, I think you're going to see more and more people gravitating, unless it's a winery that they absolutely love, they want to go and say hello to someone and just pop inside and be in that tasting room environment. I think you're going to see more and more people, especially after a quarantine and being, you know, locked up, if you will, for all of us inside for so long. I think there's going to be the desire to be outside on your vacation in California is going to extend much longer than coronavirus and the vaccine. And I think we'll see that in people's decisions of where they choose to go. And I think wineries will see the value in being outside regardless when they can be.
Yeah, I think I would agree with both of those points. I mean, I know we were always really proud that you didn't need a reservation to come to Tablas Creek. And now that we've implemented reservations and realized that what it means is that instead of having 275 people on one day and no more than 80 any other, like on Saturdays, and no more than 80 people all the rest of the days, people are spacing themselves out and we can give everybody a better experience. So it's one of those things is that like it had some unintended positive consequences. That again, we did it because we had to do it, but I think it's going to stick around. And I agree, the whole experience of being outside has been wonderful, albeit there are some challenges now that we're all by reservation, and we just made the call this morning that we have to close our tasting room because of heat for 4 days starting Friday in the afternoon. All of a sudden, instead of just having a sign up at the gate when somebody comes by, we're having to call dozens and dozens of people and let them know that we have to reschedule them. But whatever. Well, at this point, we don't have a choice. We'll take it. We're just happy to be open. So if people want to see more of your work or follow you, what's the best way? Is it your website? Is it your social media handles? How would people who aren't already following you know to do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So to follow me, I'm at Lisa Mattson Wine on Instagram. I'm Lisa Mattson on Facebook, but I don't have a brand page other than my book. There's an X's in My Glass brand page. And I mean, I'm on Twitter too, Lisa Mattson Wine. I wouldn't say I do spend a lot of time on Twitter, but if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see wine, you'll see a lot of cocktails. I'm also a succulent gardener, so you'll see a lot of stories about my succulent gardening projects. So I do, and my dog, I have an Italian Greyhound. So it's goes wine and food and beverage, but also puppies and plants are kind of my jam when I'm not traveling. And of course, if you want to follow Jordan and what we're doing here at the winery in terms of our visitor experience, the vineyard replants, what's happening with harvest, that's at Jordan Winery across all the channels. But harvest covering it on social media is going to be very different this year for us. We're having to look at Maggie, our winemaker here. She basically made an announcement to everyone yesterday of like, we have to change all of the traffic patterns. We've already done that because of COVID. Like we do have our own bubbles here at the winery. People that work in this area are only supposed to use this break room. These bathrooms don't cross these areas just in case, to be safe. So, if anything were to happen, this person was only in this area. We're also taking that to another level with harvest just to protect all of the harvest workers because we can't lose the guy on the sorting table. We don't have an extra person to step in, So it's all of the employees aren't going to be allowed to go through the winery like we typically do to get to the kitchen. So we have to go outside. We usually are photographing everything at the crush pad, and that's not going to be something we're going to do this year. We will be able to do some photography, but we have to be very careful about when, what days, what camera we would even use to be far enough away. Luckily, we have a 300 millimeter camera, so we could be, not even going into their space and getting something on a DSLR. So it's going to be just it's an interesting year, but the most important thing is keeping people safe. And not, sharing it all on social media as we typically did before COVID.
Right. Yeah, it is. It's a new thing. We're all having to figure this out. But I know I'll be looking forward to seeing how you solve these particular challenges. As always, you're one of the people who I look to see how it's done and done right. So.
Well, thank you. I feel the same way about you and what you guys do. It's always been great for you to see your blog and your social presence. And, I'm a fan of the wines, so I buy them whenever I can. Jordan wines are very balanced and elegant, and that's what we love about Tablas Creek as well.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, everybody who tuned in this week. Again, I want to give one last plug for the blog that Jordy published this week on the new regenerative organic certification. I think it really lays out why we think it's going to be a game changer. I hope you read it. Please leave us a comment and let us know what you think. And I'll be back in 2 weeks for another Wednesday broadcast. So again, thank you so much, Lisa Mattson.
Thank you.
And thanks everybody for joining us.